Before we dive in, please like and comment. It truly helps this video reach more amazing viewers like you. Our movie kicks off in Morocco with Andy, and she's meeting Booker, her homie, and it's clear from their talk that they haven't seen each other in a minute. He tells her that the client, Copley from the CIA, is the one who called him up for a new mission, but Andy ain't cool with the job. Still, she finds out her crew's already there and decides to link up with them. Copley takes Andy to the rest of the squad, and on their way, there's a group of girls snapping pics, and Andy's in the background. She notices she's in the shot, so she tells him to retake it, thinking about deleting her pic. It's obvious she doesn't want anyone knowing her. Andy and Copley reach the squad, which is Joe and Nikki, and the squad's mission is to save the world from evil. They're called the Old Guard. Andy talks, looking all sad and hopeless, saying everything they do is pointless. Wars in the world are just getting worse, and they're not saving anyone. She ain't convinced about doing the mission and thinks it's risky for them to let someone else pick their jobs. But her crew tries to chill her out and convince her to meet Copley. Andy gets killed but tells Nikki and Joe to watch the meeting in case anything goes down. Andy goes with Booker to Copley, who gives him deets about the mission, which is about rescuing a school for kids controlled by a gang of mercenaries in South Sudan. But Andy ain't feeling safe and dips out. We see Copley laughing with Booker and Joe, who are actually hiding far off, and he knows they're watching. Andy's coming off the plane with the rest of the squad after they convince her to do the mission. They get to the school in South Sudan, hit the spot, and take out the guards, using swords and silence guns so nobody hears them until they clear all the guards. They go inside to save the kids, but they get hit with a trap, and a group of armed dudes are waiting for them. The four of them get killed, and we see Andy taking bullets everywhere in her body. She says she's tired of the cycle and dying, and her words hint she's been alive for a long time and can't die. Suddenly, the four of them wake up and take out everyone who shot at them. We find out they're superheroes who can't die. Andy realizes there are cameras filming them, and Copley set up the trap to expose their lives. It's clear the person watching the cameras has a pic of Andy, Nikki, Booker, and Joe from 1864, and Andy's stressed because their secret's out, which is going to cause them mad problems. They decide to hunt down Copley. We see Nile, who's a soldier in the U.S. Army in Afghanistan with her squad, and they're looking at a pic of a wanted terrorist. Nile and her squad hit the spot where the terrorist is, and Nile manages to shoot him. She tries to save him, but before he dies, he stabs her in the neck. Her friend tries to save her, crying, but she dies in her arms. At the same time, Andy, Joe, Booker, and Nikki are on a plane, sleeping, and they all dream about Nile and see she's in danger. Nile, who's supposed to be dead, finds out there's no trace of her wound. We discover she's also one of the Old Guard, but she doesn't know it yet. Andy, Joe, Booker, and Nikki wake up shook from the dream they all had and talk about it. Andy decides to go save Nile and bring her into the squad, but Booker's against the idea and wants to keep heading to France to find Copley, who exposed them. Andy decides to go to Afghanistan alone. At the same time, Copley goes to Merrick, the CEO of a global pharma company, and shows him a video of the squad waking up from death after getting hit with a ton of bullets. Merrick's hyped but says he'll only pay if Copley brings him one of them, but Merrick wants all four. Andy manages to get to Nile, who, as soon as she wakes up, turns into someone everyone around her is suddenly freaked out by. They're super scared of her after they were crying over her. Nile can't believe what happened and doesn't get how she didn't die. Her commander tells her to go back to her country, calls her service is done. Nile runs from people's scary looks and their talk about her. She sits in a far-off spot, listening to a song she loves. At the same time, Andy's watching her. We see soldiers go to Nile, telling her to turn herself in. Andy jumps in quick, takes him out, and knocks out Nile, who passes out. Andy carries her and puts her in her car. On the way, Nile wakes up and manages to escape the car. Andy shoots her in the head, and after a minute, Nile wakes up, having seen Andy shoot her and sure she's dead. Nile shook and stabs Andy with a knife, but Andy pulls it out like it's nothing and tells her not to do that again. Andy tries to convince Nile she's like her and that she's got answers to all her questions, and if she wants the truth, she should get in the car quietly. Nile agrees and gets to the plane with Andy, which is going to take them to the rest of the squad. Andy falls asleep, and when she wakes up, She finds out Nile tied her hands while she was out and is holding a gun, threatening the pilot to land the plane. Andy tells the pilot not to listen to her, but the pilot's scared as hell. Suddenly, Andy talks to the pilot in Russian and shoots him. Nile freaks out about who's going to fly the plane. Andy tells her they can't die anyway, but then says the plane's going to explode and someone's got to fly for real. Nile admits she knows how to fly planes, and as soon as she unties Andy's hands, Andy hits her and they fight. We find out the pilot didn't die, and Andy laughs, saying Nile must not know Russian cause she told him to act dead. They keep fighting until Nile gets hurt and her arms and legs break, but she's shook cause the wounds heal on their own. She's super scared and backs off. Andy tells her she's one of the old guard like them and that they don't die. Nile's upset, saying she's a soldier and has to go back, but Andy tells her they'll lock her up. The plane gets to France where the squad is, and they welcome Nile. They tell her that each of them dreams about the others until they meet, and they dreamed about Booker in 1812, and he's the youngest of them. Booker tells her he fought with Napoleon, and Joe and Nikki met during the Crusades and killed each other a lot. Nile asks Andy about her age, and it's clear Andy's super affected. She says she's been alive for a long time and is the oldest of them. Nile's shook that they never die, but Andy says they can die, and one of them died a long time ago, and suddenly their wounds might stop healing, and then they'll die. Andy looks sad, remembering the person who died. Nile asks if she could have died when Andy shot her, but Andy says she still knew and gets tired quick. The squad sleeps, and Andy's sitting alone, looking like she's in pain from Nile's hit. It's clear her wounds are healing slow. Nile wakes up suddenly from sleep, freaked out, and tells him she dreamed about a woman locked in an iron coffin with people around her, throwing her into the sea. They tell her name's Gwen, and she was one of them. She and Andy were the first warriors to find each other, but people accused them of witchcraft and executed them. When they didn't die, they decided to separate them and locked Gwen in the iron coffin and threw it into the sea. They tell her 500 years in the sea is enough to drive anyone crazy. Nile gets scared and storms out of the house, pissed. Andy goes to her, trying to calm her down. At the same time, they hear army forces sneaking into their house. They hear a sound from the house and rush back. They find Booker dead, and Andy tries to wake him up until he comes to. They realize the rest of the squad's gone. Booker says a bomb was thrown at him, and he doesn't know what happened after. At the same time, Copley's watching the operation and tells the squad that Booker was blown to pieces, and Andy's not there. But Copley makes the forces go back to catch Andy, cause he needs the whole squad. Andy manages to take them all out and moves with Nile and Booker in the car to find the rest of the squad. We see Nikki dead on the plane and Joe trying to wake him up after they got caught. Joe and Nikki get to Merrick's company, and he tells them he's going to change the world with them. He tells Copley to untie their hands, and suddenly Merrick stabs Nikki with a knife to make sure his wounds heal fast. He's stoked, thinking he's going to win a Nobel Prize. It's clear he's obsessed with money and fame. He says they'll turn into lab rats, but it's clear Copley's a good guy and is helping Merrick to help the world discover new medicines, not for money and fame. But he says he's waiting for him to bring the rest of the squad. We go back to Andy, Booker, and Nile, who are hiding in a deserted spot. We see Andy's wound still bleeding even though a lot of time's passed. She realizes that means she's about to lose her power, but doesn't want to tell anyone and hides her wound. She tests her hand in fire and feels pain. Booker tells her just cause she's going to live forever doesn't mean she won't talk. He talks with a sad tone about the 3 kids he lost while he's still alive and how she keeps seeing the people she loves around her die. Andy goes to a pharmacy to treat her wound and helps the girl working there. She tells her people weren't made to be alone and that she's helping her today so she can help someone tomorrow. Andy's touched by the girl's words and remembers their warrior friend who died, and it's clear she's sad about him. We go back to Copley and Merrick in a lab, trying to crack the genetic code of Joe and Nikki to figure out the secret of their immortality. Nile wakes up from sleep with a nightmare and goes to Andy, who's holding her phone with a pic of her brother and mom. Nile asks about her dad, and she says he died in the war when she was 11. She tells her their mom fought so they could live after their dad's death. Andy, sadly, says she's been alive so long she doesn't remember what her mom and siblings look like. She talks about Gwen, and it's clear she feels guilty because she couldn't save her. She says she'll save Nikki and Joe no matter what. Booker manages to find where Joe and Nikki are and plans to save them, but Nile's against them and doesn't want to be like them. She says she can't kill people without a reason and wants to live with her family that's left before they die, and she's alone. Andy gives her the car keys and the gun and lets her go. Nile stops to get rid of the weapon she's got and writes that she's done. She realizes Booker's a traitor and Andy's in danger. We go back to Booker, who shoots at Andy in front of Copley, and he's actually in on it with him. Andy, who's torn up, accuses Booker of betrayal, but he tells her to listen to Copley, who says his wife died, and since then he's been searching for the secret of immortality. He says she can help the world. Booker tells her if they figure out why they're immortal, they might figure out how to stop it to end their suffering that's been going on for hundreds of years. But Booker notices Andy's still bleeding and realizes she might die. He tries to treat her wound. Merrick comes in and takes him to the lab. Copley tries to convince him that Andy's lost her power and experimenting on her would be a crime, but Merrick refuses to listen. Nile gets to Copley, who tells her they're in the lab. He shows regret for helping Merrick catch them and realizes Merrick only wants money and fame, not to help people. He tells her about Andy's achievements and how her power saved lives from death. He says he wanted to end people's suffering and that his wife couldn't talk or breathe and suffered before she died. He asks why Andy's losing her power, and Nile realizes Andy's gonna die. They decide to save the whole squad together. Nile gets to the lab and decides to go in alone, but Copley wants to stay with her. She convinces him he'll die and she'll stay alive. He confesses his betrayal and they fight. He says they won't understand him and Andy, who've been living alone for so long. Nile manages to get to the squad spot, and Andy gets up with them even though she's lost her power. The guards hit them with gas bombs, so they can't see, but they take out the whole squad. They manage to get to Merrick, who's ready with another team to kill them. He's got an old weapon of Andy's, and Merrick threatens to kill Andy, but she manages to hit him with the weapon he's got. Nile attacks him, and he falls from the building from a high height and dies. Nile wakes up, and the squad escapes before the police get there. Nile tells Booker that Copley's gonna make it look like she died in the army, and she won't be able to see her family again. The squad sentences Booker, who they think betrayed them, to stay alone for 100 years. Andy promises with the rest of the squad to go to Copley, and they decide to work with him to save the world from evil. The movie ends with a scene where we see Booker, sad and alone, hearing a sound in his apartment, and it's Gwen, who was locked in the coffin under the sea for 500 years. And the movie ends.